everyone, it's Gabrielle, and today we're going to tier rank the most popular study methods for the Leaving Cert. So first things first, I'd like to just clarify that there are a lot of different methods that you can use to study for your Leaving Cert, and you know what? Some things work for some people, some things don't really work for others. If I say that I don't particularly like a study method on this little tier list, then you know what? That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use that study method, but you could reflect on whether that study method is actually working for you, or you could be doing something else instead. So that's just one disclaimer, let's get into it. So firstly, I'd like to actually go through the tier lists that I've made. And so the very first one for 5 stars, which is the absolute best study methods that you can use, is called Every Student Should Do This. And I give this 5 stars. The study methods in this tier list are top notch. You should definitely be using these study methods. The one after that is 4 stars, which is great, but only for certain subjects. The third one is controversial but interesting, that's 3 stars, which is basically some students find this useful, but other students just really find this to be a waste of time. And the one after that is you can find better use for your time, which is 2 stars, which is again something that maybe some people would like to use or maybe would find useful, but the majority would say that it's a bit of a waste of time. And the last one is Why Though? That one would be, that's reserved for one specific study method, and you will find out which one that is later on in the video. Or literally, if you've seen any Studyclix advice YouTube video, you know exactly what study method that's gonna be. Anyway, let's get into it. So first and foremost, we are going to rank using flashcards to study for the Leaving Cert. I think I would put this in great for certain subjects. Now, the reason why I don't think this is a 5-star study method is kind of because you can't really use flashcards for every subject that you're studying. Flashcards for subjects like biology, physics, for subjects where you have loads of definitions to learn off, using flashcards can be such a useful study method. But I feel as though the way people use flashcards is just kind of limited to learning off definitions or learning off dates for history and so on. I mean, it could be an even better study method. If you use a lot of flashcards to study for your Leaving Cert, then I'd really recommend actually using spaced repetition to go through them. Now, obviously, the process of making flashcards counts as study, but if you want to have flashcards be a super effective study method, then you really need to be going through them all of the time. So the more often you go through your flashcards, the more effective they'll be. But because you can't really use them to study every subject, I'm gonna leave them at 4 stars. So the second study method that we're going to go through is using expensive stationery to study for your Leaving Cert. I'm gonna actually put this on You Can Find Better Use for Your Time. Now, mind you, the reason why I didn't put this in a 1-star category is because some people actually find it really motivating to use pretty pens, to use pretty pages, to make their notes look super cute and dainty. If that motivates you to study, then absolutely go for it. But I'm putting it in the 2-star category just because it's kind of unnecessary. You should absolutely feel no pressure to buy loads of pretty notebooks and pretty pens and everything, because to be honest, you can study just as well with a pen that you borrowed from somebody 2 years ago and a scrap of paper that you found in the corner of your room. The most important thing is to sit down and actually do your study rather than what you're using to study, I personally found that at the start of 5th year, I wasted so much time making my notes super dainty, super pretty, and then actually not learning the content of those notes. But that's just my own personal experience with it. Maybe you're somebody that, learns very visually, so maybe making pretty notes would work for you as a study method, but for me personally, I would just rank it at 2 stars. And so the next study method that we're going to rank is using past exam paper questions. And now obviously this is going to go into every student should do this. You guys have no idea how lucky we are to be doing our exams in Ireland where we actually have past exam paper questions, because not every country has them. As in in some countries it's literally just up to your class teacher to make the exam do not underestimate how useful going through past exam paper questions are. Like literally in most subjects, there's only like so much that the examiner can ask you on. So the more exam papers that you do, the less likely you'll have a surprise come up on the day of your exam. Past exam paper questions, absolutely go through them as much as you can. This is the best study method that you could use. Well, one of the best study methods that you can use. But when you're going through past exam paper questions, be sure to like pay attention to the marking schemes as well, because I feel as though this is where a lot of students go wrong. See, they go through the past exam paper questions, but then when they get those questions wrong, they don't look at the marking scheme to figure out like where exactly they're going wrong. So pay attention to the marking schemes and do past exam paper questions. And so the next study method that we're going to rank is the Pomodoro technique, which is gonna be put, you know what, I'm gonna put it in the 5-star category, just because this was a game changer for me when I did my leading cert. Like I find, but okay, first of all, I'll explain what the Pomodoro technique is. The Pomodoro technique is basically when you study for 25 minutes and then you give yourself a 5-minute break, but you can also adjust this to studying for 35 minutes to 40 minutes and then having a 5-minute break. These little like study sessions are really, really useful for keeping you focused, but also for preventing you from burning out. See, if you just constantly study for 3 hours straight, 4 hours straight, you're gonna get burnt out eventually and you're not gonna want to study again. Whereas with the Pomodoro technique, it kind of ensures that you are not burning yourself out, you're taking lots of breaks, and this is the healthiest way to study, you know, because your brain like physically just cannot like absorb more information when it's really tired, when it's exhausted, and when it really needs a break, you know. I found personally that a mistake that I made in 5th year was actually just like telling myself, oh, at 6 o'clock I'll start to study maths, which like never happened, because like the clock would strike 6:01 and then I'd be like, oh, I didn't start exactly at 6, so I'm just not gonna do my study at all. With the Pomodoro technique, you're not telling yourself that like, oh, I'll start studying at 6 o'clock. You're basically telling yourself, I need to do 25 minutes of maths, I need to do 25 minutes of English, and that makes you actually get your stuff done, surprisingly. So 5 stars. The next study method we are going to rank is actually highlighting your notes and highlighting your textbook. Tempted to put this here, however, I think it probably should go in the 2-star category, and let me explain. So basically, people have this misunderstanding that highlighting equals studying. It doesn't actually, because when you highlight a text or whatever, it's not like doing anything to help that information stick into your head. Yeah, it makes the like information on the page clearer to read, perhaps. However, the reason why I didn't give it a 1-star review, why I'm giving it a 2-star review, is because for subjects like history or like English, if you have like really long texts to read, using highlighters can really help you to like find certain like paragraphs and find certain bits of information, like when you're looking over your notes afterwards. For example, like dates in history, or like quotes if you're writing a sort of like an essay on a poet or whatever. Like you shouldn't rely on highlighters to like absorb the information that's like on your page, but they can be really useful for being able to find information afterwards when you're looking for it. So 2 stars. Furthermore, and so the next thing we're going to tier rank is rewriting your notes as a form of study. Now I'm gonna put this here. Controversial but interesting. I think this study method really depends on like what time of the year it is. If it's like early on in the year and you don't have notes that are that great, then absolutely rewriting your notes, making them more organized, is a useful study method. However, I don't think you should be spending a lot of time doing this once it comes to exam time, once June comes around, because I think you'd be better off like spending your time testing yourself rather than just like transcribing notes, you know? I mean, if you really insist on rewriting your notes, then the best way you can go about it is actually like try to rewrite your notes from memory in like a blue or black pen, and then afterwards take a red biro or a biro in a different color and then write in on the edges all the little pieces of information that you forgot while you were testing yourself on what you know. I hope this makes sense. I spent way too much time in May rewriting my notes, and honestly, it just felt like a waste of time looking back on it, because I could have been testing myself instead. So it's gonna go into the 3-star category. And so the next study method we are going to go through is going through past class tests. Now, I can kind of like guess that people might be a bit like divided on this, but I genuinely think that it is a great study method. So the reason why I think this is a great study method is because like you literally have a corrected page of work that shows you exactly what you know in a topic and exactly what you need to like go over again. So when you go through past class tests, you're basically seeing like what you already know and what you still need to look over, which can be such vital information. It can be so useful to know that, like when you really are stuck for like something to study. If you're sitting down at your desk and you're thinking, I have no idea what to study right now, go through your past class tests and then literally like what you need to study is like written right there. Any questions you got wrong, go over them again. That's what you need to study. But the reason why I didn't put this in the every student should do this category is because I suppose it really depends on what kind of teacher you have. So if your teacher has a teaching style whereby they don't really give you like detailed feedback on your exams, then this might not be as useful for you. But in this case, I think you should really go up to your teacher and maybe ask them to look over your test again and to point out what kind of like topics you still need to go over, or ask them what they think would be the best use of your time for studying their subject. So 4 stars. So the next study method we are going to go through is actually listening to Leaving Cert related podcasts, and I am going to put this in the every student should do this category. This is an amazing study method that everybody should be doing because it is so passive yet so effective. What I mean by this is that you can be literally like washing the dishes, walking your dog, taking the bus to school, and you can be studying without putting any effort into it. Like for example, on Studyclix, we have loads of podcast episodes on like various like topics in English. For example, on the poets and Shakespeare, like Macbeth and Othello. Like you could be listening to that podcast and be like taking mental notes on what you can write in your exam. And it's a lot more fun. And for this example, it's like if you are fed up with writing, if you're fed up with reading, if you just want a break, then listening to a podcast explaining to you exactly what you need to know for your Leaving Cert, it is really useful. We have loads of free podcast episodes available on Studyclix, but also on wherever you get your podcasts from, so be sure to check those out because I genuinely think they're so useful. I wish I would have had this when I did my Leaving Cert. I would have eaten this up. So the next study method we are going to go through is actually reading H1 sample answers, and I will put this into the great category. Like, obviously, plagiarism is not cool. But if you are somebody that really struggles with coming up with things to write in your English essays, in your like foreign language essays such as French, German, Irish, whatever, then reading H1 sample answers and taking inspiration from what is written in those sample answers can be a huge game changer to your grades. When you identify the difference between like a H1 answer and a H3 answer, then it means that you can actually improve your own answers because you know exactly like where the marks are going, you know? And as a complete side note, there was this like lore in my school whereby one of the girls in the year above me when I was doing my Leaving Cert actually just rewrote the plot to her favorite Bollywood movie as like a part of her English essay, and she got full marks for it. Which is like amazing. I'm like so happy for her. So definitely do be taking inspiration from like H1 sample answers or your favorite Bollywood films, and you'll be surprised of how effective that can be for improving your grades. The reason, however, that I didn't put it in the every student should do this category is just because like not every subject has a ton of essays to learn off. For example, like maths and physics, that's just not useful for you whatsoever. However, for studying maths and physics, I would recommend actually like looking through sample solution videos instead of reading sample solutions, because when you're doing a subject that is really practical, then it's a lot better to like watch that subject in practice, as in like watch how the calculations are done and watch like how students approach physics questions than it would be to just read about it, you know? Because in the physics and maths exams, you'll be doing a lot more like practical work than you will be reading, so there you go. And so for the one you guys are probably like waiting for, the only like study method that I would put in the bottom tier, which is just using your textbook to study. I feel as though I don't have to explain this because I mentioned this in literally every single study advice video, but please do not just be using your textbook to study for the Leaving Cert. Don't make the mistake that I did. I am just sitting here waiting for a comment to say like, who would be stupid enough to just use their textbook to study? Like, that was me. I was stupid enough to just like use my textbook to study. I genuinely thought that like if I read the textbooks enough, the information would just soak up into my head. That never happened. That is just so not true. And I am just like shocked at like why textbooks are so detailed for no reason whatsoever. I mean, like, if anything, I think the most like useful part of a textbook is actually like at the very end of the chapter, where it basically has all of the information from that chapter like summarized in like an easy table. Like, that is really useful. Reading like 30 pages about a topic that like will probably not even come up on your exam, that's a waste of time. Do not focus on textbooks. And so the last study method that we're going to rank is actually studying away from your desk. What I mean by this is that you really should not just limit your study to doing past exam paper questions and listening to podcasts. I think that the difference between a H1 student and a H2 student is actually having like a deeper interest in the subject that you're studying. Like, for example, if you are really struggling with learning languages, like doing Irish, doing German, what can significantly improve your grade is actually like putting a special effort in that subject outside of school time. What I mean by this is watching TV shows in your target language, reading books in your target... I can't speak. I've been speaking for like half an hour now. I can't like say anything anymore. You should go read some books in that language that you're struggling with. Change the language of your Switch or your gaming console so that you can play games in that language, and you'll be surprised at like how quickly you'll improve by just making those small changes, you know? And also this makes studying a lot more fun. But this isn't limited to just like languages. For example, if you're struggling with English, then read more. If you're struggling with biology, then maybe watch some YouTube videos about biology, just some like random things that'll make it easier for you to like absorb that information into your head. Like in my case, I think everybody knows at this point that I really struggled with physics, and what really helped me to improve was actually going to these like it's funny to think back on it now because like I was literally the youngest member of this like sort of club. Basically on the first Monday of every month after school, I would actually go to the Cork Astronomy Club lectures, and I learned so much about physics there that I wouldn't have learned in my classroom. And learning these sort of like concepts about like telescopes and, you know, like all this sort of stuff really helped me to relate that information to what I was learning in physics, and that made me understand the content a lot easier. Basically, if you're struggling with a subject, a really useful study method that you can use is just taking a step back from your desk and doing something like practical to study that subject. Like I said at the start of this video, like obviously my tier list is gonna look a lot different to yours. So if you find a study method that works for you, absolutely go ahead and just keep on using that study method. But if you're still unsure about how to study or like what kind of methods to use, then I hope this video clarified a few things for you. If you found this video useful, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to our channel. I hope this helps, and as always, best of luck with the study.